Okay, buckle up, everyone. We're going deep on .NET messaging today, specifically Rebus and RabbitMQ.
Right. These are key tools if you're into building, applications that are truly robust, scalable. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And we're assuming you're already somewhat familiar with, like, the idea of message-based architectures.
Basics.
Yeah, think email, but for applications.
But way more powerful, of course.
Exactly. This is about taking things to the next level. So if you want to become a Rebus and RabbitMQ pro, stick with us.
Yeah, you'll learn how to build apps that can handle, well, pretty much anything you throw at them.
So let's get specific.
Yeah.
What exactly is Rebus? I mean, when I first came across it, it really struck me with, like, how simple it was.
Yeah, it is. It really streamlines the whole messaging thing in .NET, doesn't it?
Totally. But without, sacrificing power.
Right. And it's surprisingly flexible. You can use it with, like, different message formats, JSON, XML, even protocol buffers, whatever you need.
No getting locked into one way of doing things.
Exactly. That's a big plus in my book.
Absolutely. And one thing that I always look for in these systems is good error handling, because things don't always go perfectly.
Oh, yeah, that's critical.
Like, what happens when there's a network issue?
Rebus has you covered.
Does it?
Yeah. It's got these built-in retry mechanisms. If a message fails, it'll try again automatically.
Oh, wow.
You can even customize the retry policies if you want to, fine-tune things.
So it's like having a safety net.
Exactly.
Wow.
You don't have to worry about messages getting lost.
That's great. So we've got this awesome messaging library.
Yeah.
But where does RabbitMQ come in?
Good question. RabbitMQ is think of it as the engine, the workhorse,
Okay.
the reliable postal service that actually delivers the messages.
I like that analogy. So Rebus handles the logic of the message, and RabbitMQ makes sure it gets where it needs to go.
Exactly. And it does it really well. RabbitMQ is known for its reliability and scalability.
Now, one thing that was really interesting in the material we looked at is that Rebus isn't tied to just RabbitMQ.
Right. Right. It's what we call transport agnostic,
Meaning?
meaning you could swap out RabbitMQ for something else.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. If you wanted to use, say, Azure Service Bus or MSMQ or even just a simple in-memory transport for testing, you can.
So as your needs change,
You can adapt without rewriting all your Rebus code.
that is really flexible.
Okay.
Now, sagas. This is where things get really interesting for me. The sources mention them, but I've always found them a bit, mysterious.
Yeah, they can be a bit tricky to wrap your head around at first.
So in the simplest terms possible, what's a saga?
Okay, imagine you're building an online shop. Someone places an order. That order needs to go through a bunch of steps, right?
Right.
Payment, inventory, shipping, all sorts of things.
And all these different services need to talk to each other.
Yep. And a saga is what orchestrates the whole process. It makes sure everything happens in the right order, even if some steps fail.
So it's like a high-level manager, making sure a complex process completes.
Exactly. And Rebus makes it really easy to build and manage these sagas.
So you're not manually writing all that coordination logic?
Nope. Rebus takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And I guess this ties into the whole asynchronous processing thing, which the sources emphasize.
Absolutely.
And it's about, like, improving user experience.
Right. Right. Like, think about uploading a large file. You don't want the user to have to sit there and wait for it to finish.
No way.
With asynchronous processing, you can kick off that upload in the background and let the user keep doing other things.
It's like the difference between waiting in a slow line at a bank versus using an ATM, right?
Perfect analogy.
Okay, so we've talked about the theory, but what about real-world use cases? Where does all this actually get used?
Oh, all over the place.
Give me some specifics.
Well, microservices, for one.
Right, because they rely heavily on messaging.
Exactly. And Rebus makes it, well, much easier to manage that communication between services.
So less headache for the developer?
Way less headache.
What else?
Event-driven systems. Rebus makes it super simple to publish and subscribe to events.
So different parts of your system can react to changes in a decoupled way?
Precisely. And then there's job processing.
Ah, right. Like long-running tasks that you don't want to block your main application thread.
Exactly. Rebus can handle that too. It can create these robust queues for managing those jobs.
Wow. It really does seem like a versatile toolkit. And I think it's really cool that we actually have, concrete examples to look at.
Yeah. Like that ASP.NET Core Web API project that's mentioned in the source material.
Right. That really shows how all this can be implemented.
It's one thing to talk about the theory, but seeing actual code is super helpful.
Absolutely. So I'm sure there are people listening right now who are thinking, okay, this is awesome, but where do I even start? What would you recommend?
Well, the Rebus documentation is a good starting point. The community is really active too. There are lots of helpful forums out there.
And maybe start with a simple example.
Yeah, like that web API project we talked about.
Yeah. Just to get a feel for how things work.
Exactly.
This conversation has really made me appreciate the power of these, message-based architectures. It's just such an elegant way to solve a lot of problems.
And what's really exciting is how these concepts can be applied, beyond just .NET. It's really about efficient communication
Yeah.
between systems, between devices. It's a fundamental idea.
It is. So much to think about. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into Rebus and RabbitMQ. Hopefully it sparks some ideas for you out there. Go build something awesome.
Have fun with it.
And we catch you in the next deep dive.